also remembering State Senator Geraldine Thompson of Orlando, who we learned has passed away. We are talking with Anna Eskamani about her legacy and how she'll be remembered. Coming up in a few minutes, we have a Fox 35 deep dive talking with Chancellor Wynn about this investigation into the officer-involved shooting in Titusville that has really sparked a lot of outrage in that community. But first, we begin with the implementation of the immigration enforcement laws signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis yesterday.
Guys, buckle up, because this isn't...
Jamie Copenhaver, a private investigator, a former detective. Jamie, we appreciate you joining us this morning here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Hey, Garrett. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day to you. So we just heard from the governor. That was yesterday at the bill signing, just moments after he had signed those bills into law, talking about getting to work, talking about the changes that we are going to see in the coming days. Wanted to bring you on because I know you have a lot of knowledge about law enforcement and how that kind of thing works. And so I want to kind of get your perspective on what is going to change here. So my first question is, from a law enforcement perspective, now that these laws are going to be kind of going into effect and being implemented, how will this be different for law enforcement?
Well, I think it's going to be different in a number of ways. And number one, let's not forget November, the election in November, Garrett. The American people voted a mandate to the current president to fix this immigration problem. And I think it's going to be threefold. I think the federal government, we've seen it in ICE and other federal agencies. Now DeSantis has picked up the speed. And I honestly think that Florida is going to be one of the premier states in the nation to set an example for this illegal immigration problem that we're having in terms of rounding up the bad guys and deporting them.
So what is coordination like between local agencies and federal agencies? How is something like this going to work?
Prior to Donald Trump coming into the second term of his presidency, we didn't have any what you would call intelligence sharing or cooperation between federal, local, and state as it regards to immigration, because let's face it, the last administration just didn't push the immigration laws. So I think what you're going to see change today is, there are federal grant monies that are already being issued to states that are participating in support of ICE and the federal agencies, along with, I've heard from some of my counterparts, they're like, thank goodness the handcuffs are taken off of us and we can actually go out and perform our duties that we were sworn to uphold.
The context still within law enforcement that you have, it sounds like they are eager to be able to kind of take some of these steps.
Yeah, and I don't want to polarize this interview being political, Garrett, but if you just take a look at the gang violence, the fentanyl problem, the drug overdoses just here in Orlando and Orange County, it's overwhelming with the amount of deaths that we have every day from drug overdoses. So, these men and women that are out on the front lines, they have seen this for the past 4 years, and they literally were handcuffed as it pertains to enforcing any type of immigration laws. And, I just think the sheer amount of cooperation we're going to see our drug overdoses, and especially the deaths, actually decrease rather than increase in the next 4 years, actually in the next several months.
We know that it was passed, talks about training from the Department of Homeland Security, specifically for kind of the immigration enforcement actions that now local law enforcement agencies are going to kind of be on the front lines of here in Florida. What are some of the skills that you think might be learned in a training from DHS specifically that would be kind of specific to missions like this and steps like this that may be a little bit different from a normal kind of day-to-day operations of law enforcement?
As I said earlier, we have new deputies that have been on the job for 4 to 6 years. They may not be accustomed to rounding up these horrific bad guys, and I'm speaking of gang people. I'm not speaking of the husband and wife who work at a local big box store that are here following the laws. I'm speaking of legitimate gang bangers and drug dealers. Some of these newer deputies may not be accustomed to taking enforcement actions against those people. So, the federal government's going to provide training. They're going to provide, more importantly, grant money that's going to support that training, Garrett. And so, these men and women can go out on the front lines and do this job safely on their time, if you will.
Another soundbite from the governor, and this is actually just from the last half hour or so, because the governor is in Ponte Vedra holding a news conference right now. The placard says law enforcement pay raises, and he was talking about some of the additional work for law enforcement now as part of these new laws?
I don't think it gets enough attention. You can earn adequate income to have a good middle class lifestyle.
But these are additional responsibilities. These are additional tasks that are going to be asked of law enforcement officers across the state. So, what do you think maybe challenges could come from that kind of additional burden?
Well, first of all, God bless our governor for recognizing our cops and first responders aren't getting paid adequately, right? I mean, I hear it all the time. These men and women who work, their 80-hour shift or 80-hour work week are out working 1 and 2 off-duty jobs just to make the ends meet. So thank you, Governor DeSantis, for recognizing that. As it pertains to your first question, I mean, they're going to see an extra workload, but they're still out there answering day-to-day calls. And what I would hope to see in the future is, and I'm going to speak, let's say locally in Orlando and Orange County, that our intelligence units within those agencies partner up, which they have a current partnership with several federal agencies, but they partner up and form some type of strike or task force with that proper training from the federal agencies. And that task force would be basically tasked without going out and arresting the bad guys, the gangbangers that are here illegally. But keep in mind, those frontline deputies and police officers on their day-to-day routines, Garrett, they're still going to see illegal immigrants, and those folks need to be trained as well and funded.
Things that we kind of figure out there may need to be some adjustments made.
I do, and let me tell you where I think the growing pains are going to be. It's going to be with these, and let's face it, I mean, it is what it is. With our Democratic cities and Democratic mayors, our sanctuary cities, and these left-leaning mayors and leaders, I think that's going to be the major obstacle in growing pains. And, not to polarize it being political, but it is what it is. We saw that Governor DeSantis a few years ago removed the Orange Osceola state attorney for not doing her job. Supposedly, right? That's what was written. She was removed from that position. And what I'm hoping and praying for, Garrett, is that our local leaders identify that this is now law. They have a mandate from the law, and we don't get into that Democrat versus Republican that we see nationwide, and these guys allow our cops to do their jobs. I think that's going to be the major obstacle in growing pains, but I can assure you the governor has a remedy for that too.
A former detective, private investigator, always good talking with you, and we appreciate you joining us this morning here on Fox 35 News Plus.
Thank you. Have a safe day, brother.